You've seen it 100 times. Dorothy clicks her ruby slippers, whispers, "There's no place like home," and wakes up in Kansas surrounded by loved ones. For over 80 years, The Wizard of Oz has been sold to us as the ultimate family film. But what if I told you that nearly every frame of this cinematic masterpiece contains hidden meanings, dark secrets, and coded messages that the studio desperately tried to bury? These are 20 hidden meanings you never noticed, and once you see them, you'll never watch this film the same way again. Number 20. The Hanging Munchkin. That wasn't. Let's start with the most persistent urban legend in film history, because the truth is actually more fascinating than myth. In the background of the scene where Dorothy, Scarecrow, and Tin Man skip down the yellow brick road singing, "We're off to see the wizard," something moves in the trees. For decades, people claimed it was a Munchkin actor who had hanged himself on set, and that the studio left the footage in the film. This is completely false, but here's what makes it meaningful. People wanted to believe it. Why? Because even in 1939, audiences sensed something dark lurking behind Oz's technicolor fantasy. The moving object is actually one of several large birds borrowed from the Los Angeles Zoo to make the forest look more exotic. MGM used animals throughout production to add life to the sets. Number 19. Dorothy was drugged to work longer hours. Judy Garland was 16 years old during filming, and MGM had already turned her into what studio executives called a manufacturing problem. She wasn't naturally thin enough for their ideal ingenue, so studio boss Louis B. Mayer put her on a diet of black coffee, chicken soup, and cigarettes. But that wasn't enough to maintain the shooting schedule. Garland's personal physician later testified that MGM studio doctors gave her amphetamines to keep her energized during the grueling 18-hour shooting days. Then they gave her barbiturates at night so she could sleep. This wasn't occasional. This was systematic. A 16-year-old girl was being chemically controlled to meet production demands. Judy herself later said, "They had us working days and nights on end. They'd give us pep-up pills to keep us on our feet long after we were exhausted. Then they'd take us to the studio hospital and knock us cold with sleeping pills." Number 18. The film was a financial disaster that nearly bankrupted MGM. Here's what they don't teach you in film school. The Wizard of Oz was a box office failure. Despite costing $2.8 million to produce, the film barely broke even on its initial release. It made only $3 million, and after distribution costs and theater cuts, MGM actually lost money. The studio had bet everything in this picture being a blockbuster to compete with Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which had been a massive success. When Oz underperformed, it nearly destroyed MGM's financial stability. The film didn't become profitable until its 1949 re-release, and only became a cultural phenomenon when it started airing on television in 1956. Number 17. The Wicked Witch was severely burned, and her double permanently scarred. Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch of the West, nearly died during filming. In the scene where the witch makes her dramatic exit from Munchkinland, in a burst of flames and smoke, the special effects went catastrophically wrong. The trapdoor she was supposed to drop through malfunctioned, and Hamilton was engulfed in real fire. She suffered second- and third-degree burns on her face and hands. The copper-based green makeup on her face was highly toxic, and it had to be scrubbed from her burn wounds in what she later described as the most painful experience of her life. She spent 6 weeks in the hospital and refused to do any more fire-based scenes when she returned. But here's the truly horrific part. MGM needed that shot for the film. So they brought in Hamilton's stunt double, Betty Danko, to film the witch's exit from the castle scene, where she writes, "Surrender Dorothy," in the sky on her broomstick. The effects malfunctioned again. Danko's broomstick exploded, and she was hospitalized for 11 days with severe burns and a permanent leg injury. Number 16. The snow was made of cancer-causing asbestos. In the scene where Dorothy falls asleep in the poppy field and the Cowardly Lion cries over her, Glinda makes it snow to wake them up. That snow looks magical, gently falling over the sleeping figures. It was pure, industrial asbestos. In 1939, asbestos was considered a miracle material. It was fireproof, cheap, and when ground up, it made perfect artificial snow for movies. The special effects team covered the entire poppy field set with asbestos and had huge fans blow it around the actors. Ebsen, Ray Bolger, Bert Lahr, and Judy Garland all breathed in asbestos fibers for hours during multiple takes of this scene. We now know asbestos causes mesothelioma, lung cancer, and asbestosis. It's banned in most countries. But in 1939, they dumped it all over teenage Judy Garland while she lay unconscious on the ground. The hidden meaning? That beautiful, magical snow was literally cancer falling from the sky, and nobody knew or cared. Number 15. The Tin Man's makeup nearly killed the original actor. You know Buddy Ebsen as Jed Clampett from the Beverly Hillbillies, but he was originally cast as the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. He never made it past the first few weeks of filming because the aluminum powder used in his makeup nearly killed him. The makeup department covered Ebsen in pure aluminum dust to create the Tin Man's metallic appearance. He spent 9 days filming in this makeup, inhaling aluminum powder with every breath. On the 9th day, he collapsed on set, unable to breathe. His lungs had crystallized. He was hospitalized in critical condition with aluminum dust in the lungs, which caused permanent lung damage. The studio's response? They recast Jack Haley as the Tin Man, switched to aluminum paste instead of powder, and kept filming. They didn't change the production schedule. They didn't investigate safer materials. They just found a replacement actor and continued. Ebsen spent 2 weeks in an oxygen tent fighting for his life, and MGM never publicly acknowledged what happened. Number 14. The ruby slippers were silver in the original book. In L. Frank Baum's original 1900 novel, Dorothy's magical shoes are silver, not ruby. MGM changed them to ruby specifically to show off their new technicolor technology. Red looked more vibrant on screen than silver would have, but this wasn't just an aesthetic choice. Baum's story was written during the Free Silver movement, when American farmers were crushed by debt and demanded monetary reform. The silver shoes walking on the yellow brick road represented the silver standard walking over the gold standard. By changing silver to ruby, MGM erased the entire political subtext of the original story. The hidden meaning? Hollywood stripped away a story about economic justice for working people and replaced it with sparkly red shoes that looked good in color. They literally replaced political revolution with consumer spectacle. Number 13. The Cowardly Lion costume nearly killed Bert Lahr. Bert Lahr's Cowardly Lion costume was made from real lion pelts and weighed over 60 pounds. More importantly, it had no ventilation. Filming took place during a California summer on sound stages without air conditioning, under massive arc lights that burned at temperatures exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Lahr could only wear the costume for short periods before risking heat stroke. He survived on a liquid diet during filming because eating solid food in the costume made him vomit from heat exhaustion. The costume had to be cleaned and dried after every scene because it became completely soaked with sweat. Studio documents show production was regularly delayed because Lahr physically couldn't continue. The hidden meaning is in every scene with the Cowardly Lion. When you see him moving slowly or seeming genuinely exhausted, it's not acting. That's a man literally dying of heat, under arc lights while wrapped in 60 pounds of dead animal fur. His fear and suffering aren't performance. Number 12. The film's director was fired and replaced. Mid-production. What you're watching in The Wizard of Oz is actually the vision of 4 different directors stitched together. Richard Thorpe started filming, but was fired after 2 weeks because producer Mervyn LeRoy hated his approach. George Cukor came in for 3 days to revamp Dorothy's look. Then Victor Fleming took over as primary director. But when Gone with the Wind ran into problems, MGM pulled Fleming off Oz to save their other major 1939 production. King Vidor finished the Kansas sequences, so the film you're watching is a Frankenstein's monster of directorial visions, all frantically stitched together under impossible deadline pressure. The hidden meaning? That seamless journey down the yellow brick road represents absolute chaos behind the cameras. Every scene change potentially represents a different director's vision, different cinematographer's work, different decisions made under crisis conditions. The film's unity is an illusion. Behind it was panic, replacement, and improvisation masquerading as intentional artistry. Number 11. Dorothy's famous line was almost cut from the film. "There's no place like home" is probably the most famous line from The Wizard of Oz. It's the emotional center of the entire film, the lesson Dorothy learns, the message that has resonated for 80-plus years. MGM executives wanted to cut it because they thought it was too sentimental and would make the film seem unsophisticated. Multiple executives argued that 1939 audiences on the brink of World War wouldn't respond to such a simple, childish moral. They wanted something darker, more complex, more modern. The line survived only because director Victor Fleming and producer Mervyn LeRoy fought to keep it. The hidden meaning, most iconic element of this film, the message that made it timeless, almost didn't exist because executives misjudged their audience. Everything you love about The Wizard of Oz survived despite the studio's interference, not because of their vision. The film succeeded accidentally. Number 10. The poppy field scene is about opium addiction. This one seems obvious once you see it, but most people miss it completely. Dorothy and her friends are literally drugged into unconsciousness by poppies. Poppies are where opium comes from. This scene depicts an opium den. In 1939, American audiences would have understood this reference immediately. The Chinese opium dens of the 1800s and early 1900s are still in recent cultural memory. The scene where Dorothy and the others become drowsy, collapse, and nearly die represents opiate overdose. Glinda, saving them with snow, represents the reversal of opiate effects. But here's the deeper hidden meaning. This scene comes right after Dorothy and her friends see Emerald City. The Wicked Witch puts the poppy field between them and their dreams, specifically to test whether they'll succumb to addiction when success is within reach. It's a scene about how drugs destroy people right at the moment they're about to achieve their goals. For a 1939 film marketed to children, this is extraordinarily dark commentary about addiction, and it's played completely straight. Number 9. The Wizard is a direct representation of Franklin D. Roosevelt. The Wizard presents himself as all-powerful, using impressive special effects to intimidate people into believing he can solve their problems. But when Toto pulls back the curtain, we see he's just an ordinary man, pulling levers and creating illusions. However, he's not a bad man. In 1939, FDR was in his second term as president. The New Deal had promised to solve the Great Depression, and Roosevelt had used the new medium of radio to project an image of confidence and control through his fireside chats. But the Depression was still ongoing, and many Americans were beginning to question whether the government's ambitious programs were actually solving anything or just creating the illusion of progress. The hidden meaning becomes clear. The Wizard represents any leader who projects power and confidence but may not have real solutions. When he gives the Scarecrow a diploma, the Tin Man a testimonial, and the Lion a medal, he's not actually giving them brains, heart, or courage. The film suggests that these symbolic gestures might make people feel empowered, but they're not fundamentally changing reality. The film both criticizes this kind of leadership and sympathizes with it. The Wizard isn't evil, he's doing his best. That's the most sophisticated political commentary in the entire film. Number 8. The technicolor scenes were shot in actual black and white. First, here's a technical hidden meaning that changes how you see the entire film. Those vibrant technicolor scenes you love weren't captured as you see them. The technicolor camera was enormous, extremely difficult to operate, and filmed in black and white. The camera shot through red, green, and blue filters, creating 3 separate strips of film. These were then dyed and layered together to create the color image you see. This meant the lighting had to be exponentially brighter than normal filming, hence those scorching arc lights that tortured the actors. It also meant every shot took 3 times as long to set up and cost 3 times as much to develop. When you watch The Wizard of Oz, you're watching one of only a handful of Technicolor films made in 1939 because the process was so expensive and technically demanding that most studios couldn't afford it. The hidden meaning? That beautiful color that makes Oz feel so magical represents bleeding-edge technology that was literally torturing the people on screen. Every vibrant color came at a direct cost to human comfort and safety. Number 7. Miss Gulch, the Wicked Witch, represents foreclosure and debt collectors. In the Kansas sequence, Almira Gulch arrives with legal papers to take Dorothy's dog, Toto, away. She's a wealthy landowner using the law to punish a poor farm family. She rides a bicycle that looks exactly like a broomstick and dresses all in black. Then in Oz, she transforms into the Wicked Witch who terrorizes Dorothy. This isn't subtle. In 1939, during the tail end of the Great Depression, foreclosure was the great terror facing American families. Banks and wealthy landowners were seizing property from people who couldn't pay their debts. Miss Gulch represents those creditors. The hidden meaning? The Wicked Witch isn't just evil for the sake of being evil. She represents the very real threat of economic destruction. When she's trying to get the ruby slippers from Dorothy, she's trying to repossess something of value. When she writes, "Surrender Dorothy in the sky," she's making the same demand any creditor makes. Give up and hand over what you have. The film suggests that these economic predators can be defeated, but only through cooperation and exposing their weakness. It's an economic allegory disguised as fantasy. Number 6. The film was released the same week. Sopu started The Wizard of Oz premiered in Hollywood on August 15, 1939. Germany invaded Poland on September 1, 1939, starting World War II. The film went into wide release just as the world was learning about the invasion. By the time most Americans saw this film in theaters, World War II had already begun. This timing creates a profound hidden meaning in the film's themes. "There's No Place Like Home" resonated with audiences who knew millions of Europeans were about to be driven from their homes. The Wicked Witch's flying monkeys evoked fears of aerial bombing. The witch's army marching and chanting "O-E-Ya-A-O-Ah" looked alarmingly like newsreel footage of Nazi rallies. Most powerfully, the film's message that evil witches can be defeated by ordinary people working together became deeply important to American audiences who were watching Europe fall to fascism. The film accidentally became wartime propaganda, offering hope that impossible evil could be overcome. The hidden meaning? Every American who saw this film in late 1939 watched it through the lens of impending war. The triumph over the witch wasn't just fantasy. Number 5. Buddy Ebsen's voice is still in the final film. Remember how Buddy Ebsen nearly died from aluminum poisoning and was replaced by Jack Haley as the Tin Man? They reshot all of his scenes, but if you listen carefully during "We're Off to See the Wizard," you can still hear Ebsen's voice mixed into the soundtrack. The production had already recorded all the musical numbers with Ebsen before his hospitalization. When Haley took over, they recorded new vocals for most songs, but in the group number "We're Off to See the Wizard," Ebsen's harmonies were left in the mix. So you're hearing the voice of a man who nearly died, still echoing through a film he was erased from. The hidden meaning is haunting. Ebsen is literally a ghost in this film, his voice surviving in a body that isn't his anymore, singing alongside actors moving through scenes he'll never appear in. It's the perfect metaphor for Hollywood's casual cruelty. Their labor still exists, but they receive no credit and no compensation. Number 4. The horse of a different color was poisoned multiple times. In the Emerald City sequence, Dorothy and her friends ride in a carriage pulled by the horse of a different color. This effect was created by coating real horses in toxic jello powder dissolved in water. The production used at least 4 different horses, changing them for each color. But the jello mixture attracted insects, and the horses repeatedly tried to lick it off because it was sweet. The gelatin and food coloring made several horses sick. One horse had such a severe reaction that filming had to be delayed while a veterinarian treated it. The hidden meaning? Even the animals weren't safe from MGM's obsession with visual spectacle. That whimsical, magical effect represents real animals being coated with toxic substances for seconds of screen time. The entire philosophy of this production can be summarized as sacrifice anything and anyone for the shot. Number 3. The Scarecrow's Dance nearly broke Ray Bolger's back. Ray Bolger was a professional vaudeville dancer known for his loose, rubber-limbed style. His scarecrow performance seems effortless, full of impossible bends and contortions. But the costume made these movements excruciating. The scarecrow costume had a metal frame underneath to keep its shape. The frame consisted of a wire skeleton that dug into Bolger's body with every movement. His back was regularly bleeding under the costume from where the wires cut into his skin during the elaborate dance sequences. The scene where he does his famous wobbly dance down the yellow brick road, he filmed that while his back was bandaged and bleeding. Bolger later said the pain was so intense that he'd vomit from it between takes. But you'd never know it from watching the film. His performance is pure joy, pure physical comedy, pure energy. The hidden meaning? Professional performers in Hollywood's golden age were expected to literally bleed for their art, and they did it without complaint because complaining meant never working again. Number 2. Over the Rainbow was cut from the film 3 times. Over the Rainbow is considered one of the greatest songs in cinema history. It won the Academy Award for Best Original Song. The American Film Institute ranked it as the #1 movie song of all time. MGM executives hated it and tried to cut it from the film 3 separate times during production and editing. Their reasoning? It was too slow, too sad, it made Judy Garland look bad, and most damningly, it took place on a farm with animals which they felt was beneath the dignity of an MGM prestige picture. Producer Mervyn LeRoy fought to keep it each time, but barely won. The hidden meaning transforms the entire film. The one element that made The Wizard of Oz immortal. The song that perfectly captures the yearning at the heart of the story. The moment of vulnerability that makes everything else matter. The studio considered it the weakest part of the film and wanted it gone. This reveals a profound truth about Hollywood. The executives who controlled these productions had no idea what they were making. They didn't understand their own film. The elements that seem most essential, most obviously correct in retrospect, were the elements they wanted to eliminate. The Wizard of Oz is a masterpiece that survived its own creators. Number 1. The entire film is about Dorothy's possible suicide attempt. This is the darkest hidden meaning in The Wizard of Oz, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Watch the Kansas sequence carefully. Dorothy runs away from home after Miss Gulch threatens to take Toto. She's upset, crying, feeling unwanted and unloved. Professor Marvel tricks her into going home by lying that Aunt Em is sick and crying for her. She runs back toward the farm, but before she can get there, a tornado strikes. She reaches the house just as the twister hits and can't get into the storm cellar because the door has been locked from inside. The family is screaming at her but can't hear her. She's literally locked out of safety while a deadly storm approaches. She goes inside the house instead and gets hit on the head by a window. Everything that happens in Oz occurs after she receives a blow to the head severe enough to knock her unconscious. When she wakes up at the end, everyone tells her it was just a dream and dismisses everything she says about her journey. She's back where she started with all the same problems, but now she's learned to be grateful for it. Here's the hidden meaning. Dorothy's journey to Oz is a near-death or actual death experience. She was locked out of the shelter during a deadly tornado. The trauma of being abandoned by her family either kills her or brings her so close to death that she dissociates completely from reality. Oz is either a dying hallucination or an afterlife fantasy. The film can be read as Dorothy processing her own death or near death, with the journey teaching her that even a difficult life is worth living. The ruby slippers, which allow her to go home anytime she wants, represent her ability to choose life over death. When Glinda tells her, "You've always had the power," she says Dorothy always had the choice to return to life, to choose home despite its problems. The hidden meaning gets even darker. The entire film can be read as the fantasy of a girl who attempted suicide or who died from being locked out during a natural disaster. Her "There's no place like home" epiphany represents either choosing to return to life or accepting her death by romanticizing the life she's leaving behind. This reading is supported by the film's surreal logic, the fact that everyone in Oz is played by actors who appear in Kansas, and the fact that her happy ending is returning to the exact situation she was desperate to escape from at the beginning. The Wizard of Oz is secretly a film about a child's suicide attempt or death, disguised as a fantasy adventure. MGM accidentally created one of the darkest children's films ever made. The Wizard of Oz is a film built on suffering, accidents, and near catastrophes that somehow coalesced into something magical. Every frame contains hidden darkness, drugged actors, toxic materials, near-fatal injuries, studio cruelty. Yet it became one of the most beloved films ever made, precisely because that suffering is visible if you know where to look. The vulnerability, the pain, the yearning, they're all real. When Dorothy clicks those ruby slippers and says, "There's no place like home," she's not just acting, she's expressing a genuine desire to escape the nightmare production she's trapped in. When the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion say they'll miss her, those actors really are saying goodbye to a traumatic experience they survived together. The magic of The Wizard of Oz is that real human suffering was accidentally preserved in perfect technicolor, disguised as fantasy, and it touches something genuine in everyone who watches it. There's no place like home. And after everything that happened on that soundstage in 1939, everyone involved couldn't wait to get there.